There's a few questions coming up about how to decrease an increase of your work of breathing. So I drew up here lungs. Okay. Now I'm not going over the segments. I just want you to understand. I want you to keep in the back of your head how many lungs do we have? We have 5. Okay. So we have 5 different segments. These lines that separate the lungs are called fissures. Okay. If somebody did a lobectomy and they took one lung out, a partial lobectomy out, these will actually still function just fine. These will still function. The only thing is now there's a void. There's a void where the lung used to be at, and that's obviously going to fill up in space. So how is that going to fill up? This by itself, this lung that now there's a void, is actually going to stretch itself out by itself. The lung will actually do that itself. Yep. We see that all the time. Now, worst case scenario, let's say you took a surgeon had to take a whole entire lung lobe out. And the heart that stays mediastinal in the center. Okay. Now, if I took the whole entire lung out, what would happen to this lung? That's going to triple in size. There's a reason why I'm bringing up a very, very good, a complex question, but trying to make it easier for everybody to understand really quickly. This lung will actually triple in size. That one lung by itself will triple in size, and the heart will actually get moved over, shift over to the right, depending on where the lobectomy was, and the heart will actually be found more underneath the armpit than in the center. We get that a lot, especially for complete lobectomies. The body can't live with a small volume. Your body by itself it knows this. It understands this. It understands that it can't live with a small volume. Okay, it's not made for that. Like, for instance, if I breathe really shallow right now, has anybody ever heard of the dead space factor? So when let's say oxygen comes in, and oxygen comes into your trachea, your windpipe, okay? Does oxygen get deposited in the blood at that point? No, of course not. That's not your alveolar capillary membranes. It has to reach all the way into the lungs to the alveolar capillary membranes in order for oxygen to get transported past the semi-impermeable membrane for that oxygen to be put into the blood. And then on exhale, the CO2 would get pulled out. Okay? So if this whole lung right here, so this one lung will actually triple in size. The body can't live with a small volume. If I breathe really shallow, let's say I'm doing this. I'm breathing really shallow. Is that the same as me breathing in deeper? No, of course not. Me breathing shallow might not act, there's on dead space, that means like the airway itself, that doesn't make it, not necessarily into the lungs, even the bronchioles aren't for gas exchange. It has to be met at the alveolar capillary space. So I'm just writing up a macroscopic view or a microscopic view. So if I pull the lung parenchyma and opened it up and just took a look at the alveoli under the microscope, I would see this would be the airway. This is the alveolar sac. So air has to transport into there. Oxygen gets passed through the semi-impermeable membrane, deposited into the blood. Now at what depth? Meaning how deep am I supposed to breathe in order for oxygen to come in and CO2 to come out? If I breathe like this, that might not be enough. That might not be enough at all. That might actually be completely horrible, where I am breathing so shallow that it'll be enough for a squirrel to live, but it wouldn't be enough for a human being to live. The dead space in somebody's airways, that's the nasal pharynx, oral pharynx, down the trachea, bifurcates to left and right hemispheres of your lung lobes, okay, and then goes all the way up to the alveoli. That's all called dead space. If I breathe in 250 milliliters, I'm only filling up the dead space. Okay, meaning if I breathe very shallow, oxygen didn't even get deep enough in order for it to go into my blood because I breathe too shallow. And then I see a lot of people like that. I see a lot of people asking, why am I getting so out of breath so quickly? Well, how deep are you breathing? Very good, halfway, I love it. So how deep is that person breathing? Is the person breathing deep enough? Maybe they might not be breathing it deep enough.